Hello, I'm Bernard Hickey from interest.co.nz and welcome to a special report brought to you in association with ASB. Today I want to have a look at the government's finances. Now you may be wondering, surely didn't we do this a month or so ago when the budget was out? Well, we've got some new numbers that have been put together by Bill English, which look at the structural deficit in the government and compares it over a long time to see how well or badly the government's doing. Now we know that the government's forecasting deficits for at least another decade, which is bad enough on its own. But what happens when you have a look at the structural deficit, once you take out the effects of servicing costs, debt servicing costs? And this is a startling and sobering picture. If you look at this first chart, this is the normal budget deficit, just what we normally look at as the budget deficit. And it shows that in the late 80s and the early 90s, we went into significant deficit. Then through 1993-4, and then right up until 2008, we were in surplus. All sounds good. But then you have a look at what was happening to the financing costs. And you can see here at this chart showing the financing costs that they were very heavy in the early 90s. We had a big debt. We had to reduce it by selling state assets, and we managed to get that debt down. But through that period, we had quite high financing costs. But then when you look at what's happening in the last decade or so, where we've managed to reduce that debt and actually build up some assets in things like state-owned enterprises and the New Zealand Superannuation Fund, and you can see we're actually making money from those finance assets, which is good. It made the budget look good. The trouble is that it disguised what was happening with the structural position of the government's deficit. And actually, as you can see here in this third chart, over that period, the core deficit, the structural deficit, the structure of the government, actually went into deficit just only twice in the early 1990s. That led to the mother of all budgets that Ruth Richardson put through. And then it was in surplus for all that period up until 2008. The forecast now is we're looking at a structural government deficit approaching 7% of GDP for the next 5 years at least, and possibly longer. We have a massive budget deficit problem that has to be dealt with by the government and the public in a debate which should look at changing the way we run not just our economy, but in particular the government. It will be a debate, we hope, that the government gets going. Bill English, the Finance Minister, is starting to look at these issues now that the initial trouble around the global financial crisis is starting to ease and the budget's being dealt with for 2009. Now there needs to be a debate within government, outside of government, about how we deal with this massive structural fiscal deficit. I'm Bernard Hickey. That was a special report brought to you in association with ASB.